The wind tore through the Montana pines like a wild animal, shrieking with a fury that shook the brittle branches above. Snowflakes whipped sideways in the storm, clinging to rusted metal and frozen ground alike. Beneath the sagging frame of an old, abandoned truck on the roadside, a German shepherd curled into herself, her body trembling violently. Her fur was patchy, matted with ice and mud. Blood stained her polled, dried but crusted thickened, her ribs strained under the weight of every breath. She didn't move, not even when a passing semi roared by, sending up clouds of white dust. She just watched the road, waiting, hoping. Somewhere in the far reaches of her instinct, a spark remained. She hadn't given up, not yet. Rachel kept her eyes locked on the narrow strip of blacktop ahead, knuckles white against the steering wheel. Snow swirled in her headlights like ghostly dancers, but she barely noticed. Her thoughts drifted, numb and heavy. She hadn't wanted to come back to Montana. Too many memories in these trees, too many echoes in the silence. Her hands trembled slightly, but she gritted her teeth and drove on. This wasn't about healing. It wasn't about moving forward. It was just about escaping the pain of what she'd left behind and the wreckage of a life that used to feel whole. The cabin emerged from the pines like a forgotten relic, half buried in snow, shuttered and silent. Rachel parked out front and stared at it for a long moment before getting out. She didn't bother to bring her bags in right away. Inside, dust coated every surface like time itself had settled in. She lit the fire and stood there for hours, staring into the flames. Her camera sat untouched in the corner. She was here to work, to reconnect, as her therapist called it. But she wasn't ready, not yet. All she could do was breathe and try not to feel his collar still hung by the door, faded blue, worn soft from years of use. Rachel had brought it with her, not out of sentiment, she told herself, but because she couldn't leave it behind. Max had been more than a dog. He had been her anchor when the world unraveled. He'd died 2 years ago, old and sick, his head resting in her lap as she whispered promises she didn't know how to keep. After that, Rachel had stopped letting anyone close. Friends, family, clients, no one got through. She had buried the pain in work, in distance, in silence, and she had vowed never again. Never again would she risk that kind of love. The road wound through the same stretch of wilderness as the day before. Rachel barely registered it till something flickered at the corner of her vision. A blur, a shadow beneath the same rusted truck she'd passed yesterday. She slowed the car, squinted through the windshield. Nothing. Probably the wind, or her imagination. Still, her foot hesitated on the gas. The forest was too quiet, the air too still. Her stomach twisted, the way it used to when Max would growl at something unseen. Then there it was again, a twitch, a shift, something alive, something waiting. She almost didn't hear it over the hum of the engine and the whisper of falling snow. But then, like a thread unraveling in her chest, came the sound, thin, broken, barely there. A cry, not human, not loud, just a whimper, fragile. Lost, Rachel froze. Her breath hitched. She hadn't heard that sound in years, not since Max had whimpered one final time in her arms. She gripped the wheel tighter. Her heart began to pound. No, she whispered, as if trying to convince herself. Not again. But the cry came again, and this time it cracked something open inside her. Rachel sat frozen in the driver's seat, the heater blowing warm air against her face, but the chill came from inside. A memory, a fear, a choice. She could drive away, pretend she hadn't heard. That's what she'd done with people, with pain, with every memory of Max. Just keep moving, keep surviving. But her fingers moved. Slowly, without permission, they reached for the door handle. Her heart thudded against her ribs like it was trying to speak. The cry came again, softer this time, more desperate. Rachel opened the door, and, for the first time in years, she let herself feel something close to hope. The brakes screeched in the quiet of the snow-covered road. Rachel's hands gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, breath shallow. The battered blue truck sat just off the shoulder, cloaked in shadows and half buried under the weight of the blizzard. Her chest tightened. She'd passed it twice before this week. Each time, something in her gut pulled at her, something unspoken tonight. The storm was worsening, and the pull was stronger. She killed the engine, silence swallowing. The car, her heart pounded as she stepped into the wind. Every nerve screamed at her to stay inside, to keep driving, but her feet moved anyway, drawn to the outline beneath the truck. The same haunted silhouette she couldn't forget. Rachel froze. Beneath the rusted truck, two glowing eyes caught her headlights. Then came a low, warning growl, rough, broken but firm. She raised her hands instinctively, palms up. "I'm not here to hurt you," she whispered into the wind, even though she knew he couldn't understand her words. The dog didn't bolt. His lips curled just enough to show teeth, but his body didn't back away. He didn't want her near, but he didn't want to flee either. There was hesitation, conflict, pain. Rachel crouched slowly, squinting beneath the truck. She could see the tremble in his legs, the tension in his back. Snow clung to his matted fur like thorns. Something inside her softened. This wasn't a threat. This was a warning born of fear, not aggression. The dog's coat was patchy, faded, black, speckled with white, not from age, but from frost. One ear was torn. A deep scar ran along his left flank, half-healed and angry. He shifted slightly, and she saw the limp. Every part of him screamed, survivor. He looked older than he probably was, aged not by time, but by the weight of suffering. Rachel felt her throat tighten. What had he been through? Abuse, neglect. His eyes, those eyes held the same haunted loneliness she saw in her own reflection some mornings. She didn't need words to understand. She just knew someone had broken him, and still, somehow, he had endured. Rachel looked for a tag, a collar, anything, but there was nothing, just bare, weathered fur where a collar might have once been. He was nobody, or maybe not anymore. Her breath fogged in the air as she exhaled, struggling to reconcile what she saw. A dog stripped of everything except the will to survive. He didn't beg, he didn't whine. He simply watched her tense, still waiting. Rachel realized then that this wasn't just about shelter or food. This was about trust. And right now, he didn't give it freely. Who could blame him? A crack of memory, not Rachel's, but his. Behind closed eyes, the dog remembered the sting of a boot, the snap of a chain, a yard filled with broken things, empty bowls, and louder threats. The man's voice had been thunder booming and cruel. The chain-link fence clattered when kicked. The water bowl was often frozen solid. Food, sometimes. He'd once tried to bark for help. Once the man didn't like noise. The punishment taught silence. Then came the night he didn't come back at all. No more yelling, no more chain. Just emptiness and cold. Freedom wasn't sweet. It was terrifying. Survival became instinct and trust. A foreign language. Rachel stepped back, her boots crunching in the snow. Her hand reached for her coat pocket, fingers brushing her phone. Animal control. That was the logical choice, the safe one. But her heart whispered another truth. He wouldn't survive the system. A dog like this, wounded, aggressive, alone, wouldn't be given a second chance. She looked at him again. Still there, still watching. She didn't know what to do, but she knew she couldn't walk away, not yet. She knelt slowly, placing half her sandwich on a napkin just beyond the truck's reach. "I'll leave this here," she murmured, voice trembling. "It's yours, ... if you want it." He didn't move. She backed away slowly, resisting the urge to look back. The wind stung her cheeks as she returned to her car. From the rearview mirror, she watched. A minute passed, then two. He sniffed the air, limped forward, took the food. It wasn't trust. Not yet, but it was something. Each evening, Rachel returned. She never got too close. She spoke softly, laid down food, and left. No expectations. No pressure. The dog, still unnamed, still silent, watched her every time. He never approached, but he never ran. Their routine became an unspoken ritual, a quiet rhythm of cautious kindness. The space between them was filled with unspoken hope. The storm grew angrier with each night. Wind clawed at her coat, ice clung to her eyelashes. But Rachel kept coming, even when her own fingers went numb. Even when doubt crept in, she returned. She couldn't explain why. She just knew that he was waiting, and she didn't want him to feel forgotten. That night, something changed. She returned, not with food, but with a folded blanket, kneeling slowly. She placed it just outside the truck, where he could reach it without feeling threatened. Her voice was barely a whisper. "For you." Then she walked away, heart aching with hope and fear in equal measure. When Rachel returned at dawn, the blanket had vanished into the truck's shadow. For the first time, it didn't feel empty. As night fell, Rachel looked out her window. There he was, limping, trembling, but walking her way, not running, choosing. Rachel leaned against the old wooden porch, her eyes fixed on the dog. He was an imposing figure, with a shaggy coat and an air of mystery surrounding him. He had been coming to her cabin for days now, always at dusk, always keeping his distance. Tonight, the air was thick with the weight of unspoken things. She could see him flinch slightly, his head snapping toward the faint creak of the porch beneath her feet. It was as if he was learning to trust, one hesitant step at a time, yet still there was fear in his eyes. Rachel let out a quiet breath. She wasn't in a rush to push him. The dog had his own pace, just like her. And so she let the silence hang between them, the tension easing into the night, each of them learning the boundaries of this fragile truce. His presence, though quiet, was a comfort, just another reminder that perhaps, just maybe, things could be different. Rachel had already begun to feel an invisible thread connecting them. It wasn't a loud, obvious thing, but more like the soft hum of a distant melody that you only notice when you stop moving. As she sat on her couch, scrolling through her photography, the name surfaced. Bear, it just fit. Big, strong, a creature of the wilderness, with eyes that held stories of survival and solitude. But she didn't say it out loud, not yet. It felt like too much of an admission, too deep a step. Instead, she kept the name to herself, letting it nestle in her thoughts, close to her heart. The cabin was quiet, save for the faint clicking of Rachel's mouse as she edited a photo. The room smelled of pine and the cold wind drifting through the cracks in the old windows. Her voice broke the silence. "I wonder if I'll ever get used to the quiet here," she said, almost to herself. She wasn't expecting an answer, but she left the door cracked just a little wider anyway. Maybe Bear would hear her, maybe he wouldn't. Either way, she spoke aloud, filling the space with sound. She was talking to him in small, subtle ways. Maybe one day he'd step through that door. It was the first snow of the season when the change happened. Rachel had just finished her cup of coffee when she noticed him. He was standing in the yard, watching her through the window with those deep, soulful eyes. As the snow began to fall in thick, silent layers, something shifted in him. Bear took a hesitant step toward the door. Another step. Then, with his paw lifted in the air, he placed it carefully on the threshold of the door. His eyes locked with hers, wide with uncertainty, yet unblinking. And then he entered. Not far, just enough to feel the warmth. Rachel's heart raced as she held her breath. This was it. He was letting her in. It was a slow, hesitant trust, but it was trust all the same. She didn't move. She couldn't. The moment was too fragile. Rachel slowly knelt, keeping her movements steady and calm. Bear's gaze flicked down to her hand, his body taut with tension. She didn't want to rush him. She just wanted him to know that he could stay. The world outside was covered in snow, but inside it was just them, silent, raw, and vulnerable. She reached out and gently touched his paw, feeling the coldness of his fur against her skin. For a moment, everything stopped. The air held its breath, waiting. And then Bear didn't pull away. Her eyes welled up with unshed tears as she looked into his eyes. In that moment, she realized they were both healing. Two lost souls finding solace in one another. The days passed. Bear became more comfortable, more curious about the cabin. Rachel watched him from the porch as he bounded through the snow, his large paws kicking up flakes as he tried to navigate the slippery terrain. His movements were awkward, his coordination still rough. But there was joy in his eyes, genuine joy. Rachel laughed, the sound escaping her lips like a release of something long held in. The sound of her own laughter surprised her. It had been so long since she'd felt it, and it surprised Bear too. He stopped in his tracks, his head tilting to the side as if trying to understand this new sound. But then he joined in, bounding toward her with his tongue lolling out in pure excitement. For the first time in a long while, Rachel allowed herself to feel the warmth of happiness, and Bear, in all his clumsy glory, had brought it to her. That night, the air was thick with an eerie stillness. Then, a coyote's howl pierced the quiet, sending a chill down Rachel's spine. She stiffened, instinctively moving toward the door to lock it. But before she could reach it, she heard the sound of Bear's paws hitting the floor. Without hesitation, Bear was on his feet, his body tense with focus. He bolted toward the door, not running from the sound, but charging toward it. Rachel watched, stunned, as he barked into the night, a low, guttural growl escaping from his chest. Her heart hammered in her chest, but she stood frozen, watching Bear protect the cabin with an unwavering loyalty. The night seemed to stand still, the howl of the coyote fading into the background as Bear's silhouette loomed against the darkness. Days turned into weeks, and their bond deepened. It wasn't just food they shared anymore. Rachel would sit by the fire in the evenings, and Bear, unprompted, would curl up beside her, resting his head near her feet. His presence was comforting, like a soft weight on her heart. She could feel his warmth, his steady breathing, as he rested there, trusting her enough to let his guard down. There were no words between them, just shared silence. And Rachel realized that this quiet companionship was more than enough. But healing wasn't without its setbacks. There were moments when Bear would flinch at sudden movements, when the sound of a broomstick scraping against the floor would make him growl low in his throat. There were moments when loud bangs like the slam of the door or the crack of thunder would send him retreating to the safety of the bed. Trembling and anxious, Rachel knew the trauma was still there, hidden beneath the surface. But she also knew that he was trying, just like her. One morning, they ventured into town. It had been weeks since Rachel had last been into the busy area, and as they walked along the road, a truck sped past, its engine roaring like a beast. Rachel froze, her heart seizing in panic. The sound of the truck was too familiar, too terrifying. She could feel the tension gripping her chest, her body tense with old fear, and then she felt it, a warm, steady presence at her side. Bear stood there, his eyes meeting hers, calm and patient. In that moment, she realized that her own scars, much like his, were still raw, but she wasn't alone. She never would be again. A trip to the vet had been a long time coming. Bear had resisted at first, nervous and unwilling to trust the unfamiliar place. But Rachel didn't push him. She sat with him, her hand resting gently on his back as they waited in the sterile waiting room. When the vet approached, Bear trembled slightly. But he didn't pull away. He stayed by her side, his body still but his trust unwavering. Rachel's heart swelled as she looked at him. They were both learning to trust, step by step, and each moment was another victory. As the weeks passed, their walks became more frequent. One day, they ventured deeper into the woods. There was no leash, no words spoken, just the rustling of the leaves beneath their feet and the steady rhythm of their movements. Side by side, they walked. There was a comfort in the silence, a language they both understood. In those moments, they didn't need anything else. Just each other. Bear had stopped staying in one room. He followed Rachel everywhere, now through rooms, down trails, across fields. He was always there, a steady shadow, watching over her. Rachel found herself laughing more often, feeling the warmth of his presence like a steady heartbeat in her life. One quiet night, as they sat by the fire, Rachel leaned close to Bear. She could feel his steady breath, the calm of his body next to hers, and in that moment the words slipped out. Barely a whisper, "You're safe now." Bear turned his head to look at her, his eyes soft and trusting. It was a promise. They were both safe now. The phone rang, shattering the peace. Rachel picked it up, her heart still warm from the closeness she shared with Bear. But the voice on the other end froze her. "I think that dog is mine." Rachel's world tilted. She looked at Bear, lying next to her, and for a brief moment, the silence between them felt like an unspoken farewell. The sound of a knock at the door breaks the silence, sending a chill down Rachel's spine. She wasn't expecting anyone. Bear, who had been lying quietly beside her on the couch, lifts his head, ears twitching. She moves cautiously toward the door, her heart suddenly beating faster. The man standing there is tall, dressed in dark, worn clothing, his expression hard as stone. He holds up a faded photograph of Bear, the same dog but younger, with a different man beside him. "That's my dog," the man says, his voice rough and demanding. "Bear was my guard dog, he belongs with me." Rachel's blood runs cold. This was not the man she had imagined could return. Rachel's stomach drops. The man standing on her doorstep, she knows him. His face is etched with cruelty, a memory that haunts the town's whispers. He's connected to a scandalous dogfighting ring that had been busted years ago. But despite the rumors, he'd never faced charges. Her mind races, the images flashing back of the investigation, the news reports, the unsettling rumors of his viciousness. Bear, this sweet, loyal creature, had been a part of his world, a part of something dark and violent. As Rachel stands frozen in shock, a cold realization settles over her. Bear's past was far more sinister than she ever imagined, and now this man has come to claim him. Bear begins to whimper softly at the sound of the man's voice. His body, once relaxed, stiffens, and his tail tucked between his legs. Rachel watches, horrified, as Bear takes a cautious step backward, eyes wide and fearful. He cowers, shaking as though in pain. The man speaks again, and Bear's whimpering deepens into a soft growl. Rachel's heart breaks as she watches her brave companion react in terror. It's as though the years of abuse are flooding back to him. The man's presence is a trigger. Every inch of Bear's body screams fear. Rachel's protective instincts surge, and in that moment she knows she can never let Bear go. Rachel is desperate. With no formal adoption papers or legal documentation proving Bear is hers, the law remains neutral, giving the man a chance to reclaim his property. Animal control has no grounds to step in. Caught between a legally ambiguous situation and the emotional testimony of Rachel's love for Bear, the clock is ticking. Rachel has a mere 48 hours to prove Bear's true home is with her. She fights against the helplessness, the cold reality setting in. Bear is her dog, her family, and she won't give up without a fight. Rachel begins documenting Bear's every reaction, each flinch a painful reminder of his trauma. At the sound of raised voices, his body tenses, ears flattening against his head. When she touches his collar, his whole body jolts, his eyes wide with panic. The sight of gloves, even when Rachel is just picking them up, sends him scrambling. To the farthest corner of the room, his tail disappears between his legs, and his breathing quickens. She takes notes, carefully observing and recording every flinch, every sign of fear. The evidence is building, a silent testimony of the pain Bear has endured. Rachel can see it clearly. Now his past has shaped him, but she will be the one to help him heal. Rachel heads to the local shelter, hoping for a clue, anything that might prove Bear's history. She talks to the staff, her voice strained as she pleads for any records, any small trace of Bear's past life. The shelter's records are sparse, but one older volunteer mentions a dog fitting Bear's description, a large German shepherd, found near a local fighting ring. There are no concrete details, but the mention alone is enough to spark hope. In Rachel's heart, she knows now that she's not fighting alone. There are others who understand, and they'll help her fight for Bear's freedom. The man returns the following day. This time, Bear doesn't shy away. The moment he hears the man's footsteps approaching, his body stiffens. Bear positions himself in front of Rachel, low growls escaping from deep within him. His eyes never leave the door. This isn't the fearful dog from yesterday. He stands tall, proud and protective. His growls deepen into a steady, threatening rumble. Rachel is in awe of the transformation. Bear isn't hiding anymore. He is standing up for himself, for Rachel, for their bond. His silent courage tells Rachel everything she needs to know. Bear has found a home with her, and nothing is going to take him away. Rachel's phone is in her hand, the camera app open. She watches Bear, her heart swelling with pride as he faces the man. With every protective growl, with every defiant stance, Rachel records it all. The video captures the transformation. Bear, once the broken animal, now strong and loyal, guarding the one person who has ever shown him love. The camera picks up his trauma, his loyalty, and the painful history that brought him to this point. Rachel knows this footage will be the turning point, the undeniable proof that Bear is her dog, that he is more than just a property to be claimed. Rachel gathers everything she can. Bear's vet provides a statement detailing his history of injuries, the scars from deep old wounds that never fully healed, signs of neglect and abuse. She collects photographs of Bear's healed cuts, scars that no longer bleed but still carry the memory of pain. She finds statements from animal behaviorists, experts who testify to Bear's traumatic past, his instincts shaped by cruelty. With every piece of evidence, Rachel's case grows stronger. She builds her argument carefully, methodically, knowing this is her chance to show the world the truth about Bear's past and his right to stay with her. The hearing room is filled with tension. Rachel stands at the front, her hands shaking but her resolve unwavering. Bear sits quietly beside her, alert but calm, as though he knows this moment is as important for him as it is for her. The man stands opposite them, arms crossed, his face hardened by arrogance. Rachel speaks with raw passion, her words carrying the weight of everything she's learned about Bear's pain. She doesn't just want to prove that Bear belongs with her, she wants the world to see the bond they've formed, the love and trust that can never be broken. The man's arrogance cracks under the weight of the evidence and the emotion in Rachel's voice. He stands there, silent, eyes flickering between Rachel and Bear. The crowd watches, the tension palpable. Finally, with a huff of frustration, he turns and walks away, defeated. He doesn't say a word. Rachel's heart pounds in her chest, her breath catching as the reality settles in. Bear is staying with her. No one can take him now. The ruling comes down. Bear is Rachel's. The courtroom fills with a sense of relief, and as Rachel looks at Bear, she whispers, "We're home. The battle is over." Rachel sat at the worn wooden table, the papers trembling slightly in her hands. She had waited so long for this moment, the moment that would finally seal the bond she had fought so hard for. Bear, her loyal, quiet protector, was now legally hers. The realization hit her like a wave, and tears welled up in her eyes. Her fingers traced the signature lines, each stroke marking the end of a long, uncertain journey and the beginning of something permanent. Bear sat by her side, his gaze steady as though he understood. His brown eyes, full of trust, met hers, and in that shared look she felt the weight of all they had been through. He was hers, and she was his, forever. Rachel couldn't hold back the floodgates any longer. As she placed the signed papers on the counter, she felt the burden of uncertainty lift from her shoulders. Months of fear, the long legal battles, the waiting goal of it vanished in that single moment. Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't born of sadness this time. They were tears of relief, of joy. She laughed through them, a sound that was more genuine than she'd heard in months. Bear, sensing her release of emotion, gently nudged her hand with his nose, his eyes calm but knowing. They were free, together. Rachel clipped the bright red harness onto Bear, her hands trembling with excitement. This small piece of gear meant more than just protection. It was his symbol of belonging, of being part of a family. Bear stood taller, as though he understood the significance, his chest puffing out with pride. Rachel looked down at him, smiling softly. His transformation from the broken, scared dog she had first met to the strong companion beside her was nothing short of miraculous. Today, Bear wasn't just a dog, he was her forever family. As Rachel and Bear walked through the town together, people couldn't help but notice the quiet bond they shared. Rachel, always with her camera, captured moments of their connection, while Bear walked with the grace of a dog who had learned to trust again. He was no longer the broken animal he once was. He was strong, confident, and protective of the woman who had saved him. It wasn't just Rachel's camera that noticed. Their bonded was the world around them, too. Everywhere they went, people could see it. Inspired by the incredible journey she'd had with Bear, Rachel started a new photo series. She had always been a photographer, but now her work carried a new meaning. Her photos now focused on rescued animals, showcasing their resilience, their recovery, and their second chances at life. Each shot she took told a story of hope and healing, of animals who, like Bear, had been given the love they deserved. She wanted to share these stories with the world, hoping to inspire others to open their hearts to the creatures who needed them most. Bear had changed so much. Once a timid soul, unsure of the world and the people around him, he now walked with purpose, his head held high. His protective instincts had sharpened, always watching over Rachel with unwavering loyalty. No longer did he flinch at sudden movements or strange sounds. He was confident in his place in the world, and it was with Rachel by his side that he had finally found strength, not just in his body, but in his heart, too. He had become the dog she knew he could be, the dog he always deserved to be. Rachel and Bear reached the top of the mountain ridge just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange. The air was crisp, and the world felt vast, serene, as though they were the only two souls in the universe. Bear curled up beside Rachel, his fur warm against her cold skin. She rested her head against him, taking in the beauty of the moment. For a brief second, everything was perfect. It wasn't just the view, they had both found peace in each other. The world below could wait. Here they were home. As the sun continued to set, Rachel whispered to Bear, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "You saved me too, Bear," she said, her hand gently brushing through his fur. In that moment, she knew their bond wasn't just one of rescue, it was mutual healing, mutual love. The camera clicked one final time, capturing Bear's soft gaze beside Rachel, his body relaxed, his spirit whole. It was a moment frozen in time, a snapshot of love, loyalty, and gratitude. A reminder that some bonds are meant to last forever. Rachel sat by the window, watching the world outside. Her thoughts drifted back to Bear, the dog who had saved her, in ways she couldn't have imagined. Sometimes, the ones who've been hurt the most, she whispered to herself, become the ones who heal. The words hung in the air, resonating with truth. Bear, with his broken past, had not only mended his own wounds, but had silently stitched together the frayed edges of Rachel's life. Rachel recalled the fear in Bear's eyes when they first met, the raw pain that mirrored her own. Love, she spoke softly, can mend what pain has torn apart. It was their shared bond, the silent understanding between them, that transformed the wounds of the past into a foundation of hope. Every day spent together was a testament to the quiet healing that love could bring. What made the difference, Rachel continued, her voice steady, was patience. It wasn't instant, it wasn't easy, it was the gentle trust built day by day, one quiet moment at a time. Their bond didn't happen overnight. It grew like a flower pushing through cracks in the pavement. Bear's trust in Rachel and hers in him flourished because they gave each other time to heal. Step by step in her heart, Rachel understood the depth of their connection. "We weren't just surviving together," she said, her gaze fixed on Bear, who sat loyally by her side. "We were becoming whole again." Their paths, once separate and fractured by pain, had merged into one. Two wounded souls, broken by their pasts, but healed through shared love and understanding, walking the same journey toward peace. Together, they had found their way. Rachel's voice trembled as the final words slipped from her lips. "He was the reason I kept going." Her eyes filled with unshed tears, but they weren't tears of sorrow, they were tears of gratitude. Bear had been her rock when everything around her felt uncertain. He had given her a reason to rise each morning, to face the world with strength and love. In return, she had given him a safe haven. They had saved each other, not just once, but over and over again. Bear didn't just need her, he completed her. With him, Rachel understood that sometimes love is the thing that keeps you going, even when you've forgotten how to keep going at all. And in that moment, as Bear leaned his head against her, both were reminded that their shared journey was far from over, it was just beginning.